We are recording. And with that, welcome to this open source construction community call. We are very happy to see everybody here. I'm Christian, and with me we have Felix and also Max somewhere. And we are today's hosts. And we are all three of us members of opensource.construction, which is a organization that works for promoting open source in the AC space, and we do uh, interviews like this, videos like this, and we also organize events around mainly Europe. I have been organizing some events here in Copenhagen, and Max and some of the other guys have been organizing hackathons in Switzerland. And we're doing these community calls to highlight some of the hard work people and open source maintainers are doing out there for everyone. And we are so lucky today to have Chris and Mostapha from Ladybug Tools with us. So welcome, Chris and Mostapha.
Thank you. Thanks, Christian.
Um, so I think congratulations is in order because Ladybug Tools turned 13 last week, right?
Correct. Yep.
Um, and I guess that makes it one of the oldest open source tools in the industry. I guess you are at least in the top, I don't know, 10-ish. There's not many tools that I think has that many years behind them. Um, and we invited you guys to talk a bit about Ladybug Tools as an open source project, but also as a company and how you run and maintain the project. Um, and maybe I will start out with asking you what made you start Ladybug in the first place back in 13 years ago.
So, well, that will be a question for me. So the origin of Ladybug is like many other open source projects, right? I had a problem that I wanted to solve, and then for that found I saw, I had to run many studies, many different iterations of studies for, the same building or sometimes for a geometry in different location and everything. And the process was really painful to do it every single of them one at a time. So that was one part of the problem that I had, which mostly I solved with other tools like MATLAB and, some stuff automating, some optimization and everything. And then uh, after doing that, the second thing, so that was kind of solved to some extent. And then the other thing that happened was when I did that and released that and became like something that people really liked, I realized that this actually didn't help the design process because it worked in a reverse mode in a way that I was giving people something that they had no idea how it came to be, right? And then people with like years of experience now couldn't change anything because they didn't know this is the optimized option. And that was the aha moment for me of like we need basics. We need people to understand basics before we can just go do all this advanced things. And that's when I started thinking, okay, how we can, like there were questions of like, why we put shades on this side? I was like, because sun is here. Like, how do you know sun is here? Can we run an optimization? Like, you don't run an optimization to see where the sun is. Sun is there. Like, this is a sun path. And there was not an easy way also to just put a sun path and put the data on top of the sun path and put it in where your geometry is. And this sounds like something very trivial at this point, but it wasn't that easy. It was really hard to do this, what I just mentioned. And that was like, at the same time I saw Grasshopper, I worked with Grasshopper for automating geometry. Everything else was in MATLAB at the time. And then I had that aha moment that happens, after like just like, oh, what if we just do it in Grasshopper? And then I made some components, and I got lucky because GH Python became available around the time Julio made that available, and I found Python very like a language that I could use. Like it was like a sketching, like you could explore. And yeah, I started putting some components together and shared it with people in the office that we were working, and I used it on projects to show people what is what. So, and the iterative thing was great. Like, people ask, oh, what if like this? Show me temperature. What about humidity? What about wind? I was just, okay, this is how it looks like. And at some point, it became something that it felt like, okay, this is a useful package now that can be released. And that's how I ended up releasing Ladybug. At the time, I had Honeybee for Energy and Daylight, but it didn't feel right to release it. I just recorded a video, YouTube video, which I think that's how Chris learned about Ladybug Tools.
Mhm.
I just recorded a video on YouTube, just basically showing like I have this thing, but I don't know what's wrong. I haven't figured it out. Maybe I should go watch that video again. But yeah, that was the thing. Just like I kept it to Ladybug, which was at the time was only like this is the sun, where the sun is, windrows, basic stuff. And I came up with something called, which I don't think we have anymore, radiation color lily or radiation lily of
We
which.
call it the Caledome now, and
Okay,
we just
yeah, that was.
move the geometry around.
So it was all coming from like real world, real projects problem that I had to explain to people, and this was the way that was most effective and the fastest way to explaining and also empower other people. So I was not the only one who could do it. Now, like 10 people in the company could do it and show it to everyone else. So, and then the hope was like you release this, and now even more people can do that.
And I guess like from the very beginning, you uh, at least maybe you thought, maybe you didn't thought about it, but like at some point you had to make some choice to make it open source. Like, was this conscious?
Uh,
Was it like just natural part of it?
I didn't want to make it closed. There was no point of making it closed. If you so I because I always saw it as a like an educational tool, as I say, and a scientific process. And I wanted even like I said that in the past too. Like we had the opportunities to compile the Python components and all. You couldn't double click and see the thing. And we
Mhm.
knew that will give us some performance, improvements, but we didn't do it because my thing was I wanted people to have this opportunity. First of all, it's a teaching tool, so right, you just use it. Then you want to understand more, you just double click, you see everything. Then you just say, okay, what if this? You just edit it, you just close it, it just happens real time. And I think open source is kind of like a distribution mental. At the time that I did it, I didn't even like. I don't think in the first thing I called it, it is open source. It was just like this is it. It's double click, you can see it. These are the examples. Edit it, just hack around, just try to learn. And yeah, this thing of like calling it open source and picking a license and all that came after. I think I
Yeah.
just picked the common. I picked the wrong
See,
license, which
Creative
Creative
Commons
Creative
Commons.
is like,
Commons,
which
because
is
I
not
saw
a
someone
software
else
license.
did it. Yeah, it was. I was just like, oh, maybe we just picked this. Someone said, what's the license? And I don't know, like maybe this.
Uh,
Something that you can do whatever you like. It was, but I think I had a little bit of thing about like whatever you can like, but don't close it. I was from the start. I was feeling not close. Don't just stop it from like things that people can hack around and learn. That has
yeah.
Yeah.
always been, guiding factor for us. Like just like how we just I don't want this thing to stop being used for people to learn and do interesting things with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe it's also important just to say that, like, I know you called us one of the oldest open source tools in the industry, but
Mhm.
I mean, the Radiance engine that Honeybee connects to has been open source
Yeah.
since like the late 80s, I think, or early 90s. Energy Plus has been open for like, since the 2000s. I think they opened it when they translated it to C. So there was a precedent, like, too, for the, giants whose shoulders we were standing on. I mean, they had open source their work. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It always felt natural and like just building on the momentum of a movement that had already started like decades earlier.
Yeah.
When or at least I don't know. That's how I felt. I felt very. It was important to me, or especially became more and more important as like as time went on, that it's open. People need access to the code so that they can learn and keep building on it.
But so in some way, you were more aware of what open source meant when you joined than maybe Mostapha was when he created it.
I do remember there was a time, yeah, because at first we just, yeah, like we I didn't know anything about software license. I didn't even know how to code when I when I first met Mustafa. Um, but yeah, it was. I mean, I think I read a book. I think somewhere like like a year after I started contributing, realizing like, oh, there's this great precedent for, for open source communities and how people build them. And I saw a lot of parallels with how Mustafa had set up the Grasshopper forum at the time, the Grasshopper forum page for Ladybug Tools. Like, oh, this is how open source communities evolved. And so, yeah, I remember we eventually changed the license to like to GPL. I think after I read that, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is important for making sure that people get access to the code, and and that it's not co-opted for for something, or I guess really I think what we were worried about at the time is like someone taking the code, making it putting in their own closed thing, and then just developing a bunch of things on top of it that no one else could access. Like I think that was the original impetus for like why we switched to a GPL style license. Um, but
Okay.
yeah, but at first, yeah, we were like Creative
Yeah.
Commons seems good enough.
There is a book called Open Source for Business.
Mm,
That was helpful to
yeah,
learn. And I think actually it became more of a, initially we picked the license, for years, but then when we started the company, at some point we had to figure out, how we want to go about commercialization. Yeah, so that's the book.
this one was a good one for me too. The
Oh, yeah,
success
yeah,
of
that's
open
different. Yeah,
source.
yeah, that's a different
Yeah, I
book.
mean,
Yeah,
open
yeah.
source for business was really helpful when we were trying to figure out
This
how to keep the project funded,
that's correct.
in our present state. But I think this was the one that made me say like, oh yeah, okay, we should pick a real license, not just Creative Commons. um, Still got it on the
Yeah.
bookshelf, as you can see.
Yeah. And how like that's kind of leads me to a different question I wrote down, but like how did you change your mindset around open source over the years? Like kind of now describe it as it was very it was like something new in the beginning, right? You didn't really have experience with, and now like how did your kind of thinking around it evolve over time?
And I think we had, let me, I don't know if I have changed my mind. I don't think about open source much to change my mind about it. But I can tell you, like, we had a moment when we started Pollination that a big question came up of, like, it felt like the easiest way for us to commercialize the project was, change the license of Ladybug Tools. So if people use it for commercial, maybe they have to pay. And with based on the numbers that we have of users and everything, it was just like you do the math of just, even if you get, I don't know, 2% of people pay you this much a month, you have a full business forever. But and that was like the moment going deep dive in, you go back and you think, okay, why I made these decisions, what do I want to be the future, how the decisions that we make now is going to affect the future. And also we were in a survival mode, really, like in a way of the project is too big to do it as a side project
Mm,
going forward. um, and we need to find a way to make money to be able to continue this, spend more time doing it. And we tried different things, and maybe we can talk about that if you want. But we ended up understanding that we have to find a way to make money ourselves. It's just making like a we're not Python. We're not Linux. And one book, actually I have it here, is I read this book, it's called, what is it, Working in Public.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It's just the making and maintenance of open source software. And this one I picked this morning because this chart changed a lot my mind. It basically says how open source projects are. So it just has a 2 by 2. So there are like high contributor growth and high user growth. So this is user growth, here is contributor growth. And something that people talk about open source, they talk about high user growth and high contributor growth, which is something like Linux or Rust, right? That's not what most open source projects are. Projects like us are basically low contributor growth and high user growth. We are like a stadium. A stadium is like, 2 people, 3 people, like 20, 22 people playing, like 100,000 of people watching in the thing. And then you have, low user growth and high contributor growth is like a club. And it calls it like, if you have low user growth and low contributor growth, is like toys. So the first thing was to understand we are not Linux, we are not Python, we are not Rust. We are like a stadium, right? We
Mm.
have a small group of contributor, and our user base is going to get larger and larger and larger. So how do you deal with that? That was one thing that I think was very helpful. The other thing was there are series of writings about there is no open source business model, which basically argues that you cannot build an open source business. All the things that people talk about, call open source business model, they're not open source. They're like either you're doing consulting next to your open source project or making a closed version of that, like MongoDB, like they have double licenses and all that. And where we ended up with was, if we want Ladybug Tools as the open source project survive and thrive and do what we want to do, we want to keep it as an open source project. And we want to start a commercial product, which is called Pollination, that the branding is separate, but they work basically in coordination to each other. One feeds to another one, and now both of them are feed. But we want to have this brand separation, and we want to have different missions, because the other thing that I think for me took a long time to understand it was, which is funny now when I said, open source project is all about exploration and doing things that no one else can do. It's about innovation. You want to take risk. You want to put it in a way that, like every PhD student can take it, take it apart, put it back together, learn what it is, and learn from all that. Commercial products are about stability, are about people knowing they can get the job done when they install it every time. It's not going to be a new thing. The UI stays the same. The time that they spend teach everyone in the company to use it will not be, they don't have to redo it. So there's a conflict between making an open source project a commercial product, because the good open source project by definition is different, at least I think, from a good commercial product in many cases. I think
Mm.
that's kind of like how it grow on us, of like, okay, we just separate the two, we keep them to work together. And then it took us a long time to also figure out how we basically, I let Chris talk about that. I'm talking too much, of like what goes to open source, what goes
Yeah.
to commercial.
Yeah, but I would just second that. Yeah, I mean, I think that was that was probably the best decision that we made when we were first deciding how, starting a company around, to sell pollination products, is that we made that brand separation. And it just, I mean, it made it, I mean, not only did it make it obviously clear to us what we were doing, but it's just, I mean, you have to communicate to everybody in the community, like, this is when you're acting like a community member, you're exploring, you're hacking, versus this is when you're acting like a customer. And if that becomes confused for people, it's just a recipe for like misaligned expectations and just, and generally just mistrust, right? So I think the fact
Mhm.
that we separated everything, it was, yeah, it was one of the best decisions, and it's one that I would recommend to other people trying to figure out how to commercialize, work that they've done open source. But yeah, I mean, to get to like the fact that, once you make that decision of like, okay, we're gonna have a product, we're gonna have an open source project, the question, you immediately need to ask yourself as a developer is like, how are you going to decide what goes in the open source project versus the product? And what code goes where. And I think we made like a kind of decision, probably maybe even going back to that precedent of like, you know, the simulation engines have been open source. This is the way the community has grown up. And we decided basically that, things related to simulation capability right? Being able to use a new model in Energy Plus that has been released, or a new capability in Radiance. Like if we are making something specifically for that, that should go under the open source bucket so that people can play around with it, experiment it. We should never really, we shouldn't be charging the PhD student who really wants to understand this and use this for new innovation and exploration. Whereas, yeah, the things that we're going to charge money for come down to the reliability, as Mostapha said, the convenience, the speed, the ease of use, the ease of teaching
Mm,
other people in your office, right? Those are things that are related to that, are what we put into our pollination products that we sell. But yeah, but the core, but pollination will leverage this open source, the open source Ladybug Tools project for its simulation capabilities, which are open source.
yeah.
So
You you touched a little bit upon it, but like, how do you like initially like balance these two things, that you have to go from being this source maintainers, like you get kind of funding in an alternative way, and then kind of to business owners, and you have to make money from your product, right? And as you said, you have to not offend somebody, and like not make it too like where's the overlap, where's the interface, like how did you balance that, especially in the beginning when you were figuring it out?
I mean, we made a lot of mistakes. Honestly, that's
yeah,
how you learn, right at the
yeah.
start. Um, uh, so what has been helpful over time is that pollination ended up being addressing, because of how we branded it and like where we found the product market fit. It's serving a very different community, or like user base, than what Ladybug Tools community is. We have a shared, so it's a Venn diagram. You will see there is a part in the middle that's shared between the two. But I think one of the things that we were wrong was we thought pollination, most of pollination customers will be Ladybug Tools users, and it wasn't the case. Most of our customers are not Ladybug Tools users. I think I haven't learned the numbers, but I can tell you the feeling of.
That's right.
I mean, I get on many support calls now, like people don't know who I am or what is Ladybug Tools, and like it's just like
That's
they just know pollination, and it's not bad because like I get sometimes I get treated like a support guy who tell me like, just tell them, like, who do you want me to tell? But okay, tell them to do that. I'm like, okay, I will tell them to do that. But that helped a lot too. Like that helped. We didn't at the start, because it was all about simulation and cloud computing and all that. It was a bit confusing for people too. It was a bit confusing for us too. We didn't. Recipes is a good sign of that. We didn't want to close the recipes because we wanted people to see it. Everyone was like, "Oh, you just closed this. We pay for a specific recipe to run." It just felt very wrong. At the same time, we didn't want to develop a recipe and see like someone uses it without understanding the limitations, everything, just like make a garbage in, garbage out and thing. So we
Hmm.
picked a license, like a non-compete license. It wasn't fully open source. It wasn't. That kind of shows that confusion of like we were trying to figure out what are we going to do with this. Um, but yeah, I mean, like we did it how we do everything else. We were honest about it. We're just like, there are things that we don't know. There are things that we know. And I think one thing that helps us a lot, whatever we do, is like the high level of trust, because people know we are here. We have been here for a long time. We will be around. We are not planning, just like to take your money and run. It's always that like there has been always that open communication of, yeah, this is what we're trying to figure out. There are parts that we don't know. There are parts we do. As a matter of fact, actually, the first version of Revit and Rhino plugins were open source,
Okay,
Yeah.
because we
I didn't
thought
know.
cloud computing is going to be
Yeah.
the thing that people want. Just to answer your question, how we figure
Yeah.
it out, we just didn't know. And then we go in and show people like, yeah, you can run hundreds of these things. And they're like, how did you build that model? It's like this Revit plugin, just like, can you talk about that?
Mhm.
It looks like, oh, everybody's interested in this Revit. And I think part of that comes from, the worst person in our company in 3D modeling is me. and I'm on average very good. So comparing to a typical, like mechanical
uh,
engineer. So we didn't know how hard it is for people to build a good geometry for energy models. We didn't, we kind of like you just have it, and then particularly with Grasshopper, just iterate through geometries. So it took us a while to click, or just like, oh my God, this is the real problem. Basically, we were like all the way at the end of the thing of like, now run like 10,000 instead of 100. What about that? And we were like, no, no, like people cannot even run one. We had to just move back. And that kind of helped us because they're just, okay, we're solving a problem for people who are not necessarily Ladybug Tools users or community. So that helped. There was not that much of a confusion anymore because they were coming us to buy Pollination, and
yeah.
Pollination was, and they didn't care if it's open source or closed source or anything. They're just like, oh, this solves my problem. And I have one more thing before I stop. Is just which I think for people who go from open source to commercial products, one thing that you need to understand when you present your product, again, a mistake that I made not understanding. So when you do open source project, again, going through this, what is this thing that how do you adopt the product in the market? You have the
The
innovators, early adopters, the adoption
The,
curve,
the, the
right?
yeah,
yeah, crossing the
Yeah,
chasm to
yeah.
between.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you have innovators and early adopters, and then you have early majority and the rest. So innovators and early adopters are usually people we are part of that. Like they're like you, they care about your story. They want to be part of that story. And that's something that worked very well for Ladybug Tools because it's all about innovation and all that. Of course, some of these people packaged it and made everyone else use it. And that's why we have this many users. But we talked to all these people, and that was the case. When you go to early majority, when you sell a commercial product, these people are not interested in your story. These people are interested in solving their problem, and that's why they
Yeah.
pay you for it, you know? And I think that's also something that I personally was confused for a very long time. I had the slides about our story and all that, and people were like, okay, can you give us a demo? you know, it's just like, who cares? Because in the past, it was all about the story. People wanted to know why we did it, how we did it, all this stuff. I think that's one of the other things that I think it took me much longer than it should have to click. And I hope like I can help other people so they get it right, like fast, get to that point faster.
Yeah, but I will add, yeah, I mean, Mustafa, you go walking through the story, it makes me reflect on just how many times, yeah, we had to change our mind and our strategy with other things. But it also, I mean, it makes me also appreciate that, like the one thing that I think was constant as we went through this whole process of trying to, you know, start a company that, could leverage our open source project and enable us to like keep working on it was that I think we started with a problem like in the industry that we knew about that remained the same. Our strategy to it changed a lot, but I know like we had always even from the very beginning we had like a slide in our presentations about this 2 week turnaround problem with energy modeling where there was a design team and energy modeling team and they just weren't able to coordinate with one another to get to getting energy modeling results and and draw conclusions from a model in a reasonable time frame that kept up with the pace of the project. And like everybody, everybody, this problem resonated with everybody else. But I remember at first, like when we were building the cloud computing platform, we were like, okay, we're going to make cloud computing in the center of this as like the collaboration space for for energy modelers and architects to work together on on the same model and like drawing results out of it. Maybe thinking similarly like, oh, okay, this is Dropbox and Google Drive, they're really important collaboration tools for people. They were in cloud storage, we're working in cloud computing, and that assumption that we made just like turned out to be completely wrong. That I mean, we have like a saying that the industry, one thing we realized, the industry likes to coordinate. They don't really like to collaborate,
Yeah, yeah,
at
yeah,
least at
yeah,
this point in time. Right. And so like just even like trying to convince people like, oh yeah, this will help with your collaboration, people were like, oh no, 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 I don't I don't want to do that. I don't want the responsibility to go over to someone else, like I'm this is my domain, that I need to make sure is done in this way. So, I mean, yeah, I know that was just a realization for us, just realizing, yeah, one, like, okay, that this was not the roadblock, like getting people to collaborate more over via, a cloud platform was not really the thing blocking people. I mean, And the thing really blocking, the main thing responsible for this 2 week turnaround, we came to realize quickly was just people having to remake the whole model and the whole geometry, which
Yeah.
is why we realized we had to change our strategy. And like in that, the CAD plugin, the Rhino plugin, and the Revit plugin, those were actually the real things that people wanted to pay for, and that was really kind of solving at least the, how much, this 2 week problem, basically, right? It could at least cut that down a lot. So yeah, I know that was a process of discovery for us, that of realizing, like, okay, what is the thing that actually is, the product that we're gonna sell and that people actually want to pay for, and is solving the immediate problem. I guess that's the other thing too, is that we kept, thinking about, okay, what is the future like? What is the future problem going to be? When, like, you can't really think about that or really start to solve that until you've at least gotten the immediate one addressed.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that again, like one of the things someone said, I don't know where I heard it, but it's just like it's much easier to sell aspirins or painkillers than selling vitamin D.
Yeah. Yeah. This,
So you have to find that thing that when people are in pain, particularly, you go there and just like, oh, we have this thing, your skin is gonna glow. And you're like, yeah, I'm dying from this pain. So it's just you have to find that bottleneck, and it doesn't mean that will always be the bottleneck. Just solve new technologies, new solutions cause new problems, right? Because technically they move the bottleneck from somewhere to another place. It's like if you have a road and there's a traffic light that doesn't work the way it works, you just solve that, then it will be the next bottleneck and the next bottleneck. So it moves, and you
mm,
just kind of you have to follow that and see, okay, which part of the bottleneck is something that people want to pay for it, which part is something that shouldn't even exist. It's not like a paid thing, it's a feature you want to solve, go for to the next one. And I also should say, like, we always say bottleneck as a bad thing, but I have come to realize some of the bottlenecks are actually really good. They basically, there are safety measures for the whole system not to fall apart. So it's good to put bottlenecks in part of the system that you have overall. I think both for open source projects and closed source projects. A famous one that I had in the early releases of Ladybug Tools was when you would run a simulation. I think it's still very similar in a way. You run a simulation, there's no results there. You just need to know how to post process or visualize it. Otherwise, you couldn't do anything. You run everything just like, what is this? Because that's like by design a bottleneck of you need to know, you need to just slow down, figure out what you're trying to do. So when you put the next one, it's more meaningful. And I think
yeah.
in other stuff, like the whole process of simulation, I think but some bottlenecks are good and healthy to make sure there are parts that everyone slows down to make sure we're not making garbage in, garbage out on,
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
on a scale.
And part of this kind of journey that you describe also, I guess, you kind of transition from these kind of enthusiastic hacker guys that really have this, small projects, and you turn into some basically business owners, right? How did you kind of experience that kind of journey, or that kind of shift in maybe focus, from from the early years to today?
Chris, I want you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
take this because I
Thank
take
you.
a,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
talk
I
for like
wasn't sure
20
if you
minutes.
wanted to talk first, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I know. So I guess it was around probably like 2018, 2017 when we first were really starting to struggle with, okay, this project has become way more popular than like either Mostapha or I ever realized. And like, we wanted to make sure that it can stay around for a long time. And I know, I mean, up until that point, right, it was like, we were working on it on weekends, right? We maybe, could justify a little bit of, like, if uh, we'd be using it on our projects in the offices where we were working at, and Mostapha was teaching it at Penn. But yeah, I mean, we first tried, a few different like models to see if we can get, Ladybug Tools kind of supported in a way that we knew we can keep it going for a while. And it took a lot of iteration when I look back on it. I mean, at first, like, we were even just thinking like, right, Mostapha said we are not Python, we're not Linux. but we didn't know any better back in 2018. So I remember us trying to really make a kind of, we considered a nonprofit model maybe of being something like Python, trying to get like, all the different AEC offices maybe to contribute to us. And like, in the same way that, Microsoft and Google, they all invest in Python, right? So that the whole industry benefits from it. Like maybe we can convince like the AEC, industry and the different architecture engineering offices to fund us so that everybody can use us rather than rebuilding their own tool in-house every time they want to make a connection to a new engine. But that one very quickly it became apparent to us that AEC is not like the tech industry, right? That they have different expectations, and they're very like, they're very used to, I mean, competing with one another rather than collaborating on things together. And so, like, yeah, we kind of quickly realized, okay, that strategy wasn't going to be the one that we were going to, wasn't going to give us what we needed to keep the project going. So, I mean, thankfully, at least the next one we tried really gave us a lot of time to figure things out, which is that we applied actually for several grants, but there was one big SBIR grant that we
Yeah.
got from the U.S. Department of Energy that,
So yeah,
yeah,
and before that, I think like we started consulting, right? We
oh,
tried to
yeah,
build that uh, open source kind of like nonprofit thing. We realized that won't work, and then we just said, okay, what if we just start consulting and see how much we can make from consulting? And I left my job first to just saying like, okay, let's get this consulting work. We got one project at the time that was big enough to getting us started. And then the grant opportunity came up,
yeah.
and we applied for the grant.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Yeah, Mustafa, you're right. I skipped
Mhm.
over a few different things because there was also a year where we just went like I think we went to six like different locations around the globe
Oh, and we did
just teaching
workshops.
workshops.
Yeah, I remember you were here in
So,
Copenhagen. I went
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see
yeah,
yeah. We
you.
yeah.
did
Yeah.
workshops. Yeah, I had
So
my son just that year, my first.
yeah, he was
It
just a
was
year
it
old.
was a quite an experience. Yeah, year old, and my wife is not going to miss on any opportunity to travel. So,
Yeah,
except for Australia, that you're just like that's too much. Yeah, there
yeah,
we
right.
went
Because
all
we
around
yeah
the world.
we did Denmark, we did Australia, we did Seoul, Korea. We did like we went around to all these different
Oh
places
my
teaching
God.
workshops,
That's
and
you're right. And that's its own podcast of like how I had every other month I had to apply for a new visa. And it was just like,
yeah,
now we taught this one, let's go get visa for the next country for the next month.
yeah.
Let's see if you can make it. Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was it was something.
yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful learning experience. I mean, I
Yeah, it was
learned a
great.
lot about how people are using the tools, like all over the world. I mean, you learn. Yeah, I mean, obviously, travel is just great for anyone, but I think we realized quickly too, like I mean, I think we were exhausted after teaching most of these workshops and doing, month after month after month of just, traveling. Okay, teaching workshop, like, trying to recover, it was, yeah, it was exhausting. And I think it became clear to us it's not a sustainable business model, at least for
Mhm.
us to try and keep doing this. But I mean, it was still a wonderful opportunity. But yeah, I have memories of those days. I'd used up like all of my vacation time just to go teach international workshops at the office, and then I'd be coming home and working on like the Ladybug Tools website just to get, just to make it clear, give us something that we could use to like point people to show us that we're actually just a legit project and not just a grasshopper plugin page. But yeah, but I mean, while we were doing all that, yeah, we applied. We just applied to a bunch of grants just to try and like, find some way to keep, uh, keep the company sustained, without needing to run to a different country every month. And yeah, and thankfully, yeah, we got a big Department of Energy SBIR grant, a small business grant, and that was really key. Once we had gotten, I mean, we actually, I think there was a month period where we realized like we got three of the different grants we applied to all at once, which was like very serendipitous. So I mean, at that point, I was good enough to like, okay, I can quit my job. I know at least we have these grants to go, to keep us afloat, and that, I mean, that really gave us the time that we needed. I think, especially that SBIR grant, to figure out like well, yeah, like, I mean, this part that we were just telling you, like what parts are going to be open source, what's going to be our product. And I will say, like, yes, while the argument of, we made of like a percentage. If just a percentage of our, our open source community could become our customer, right? That, then we would be all set as a business. We learned that's not an argument you should tell yourself as an open, as someone founding a company, or like, someone really trying to keep the project funded. But it was a very successful way of helping us, like, showing at least the Department of Energy that, hey, there's a lot of value here that we're bringing.
Mm.
We're not gonna waste the grant money. We're at least gonna use it to enrich this community of, hundred thousands, people, thousands of people with hundreds of thousands of downloads. So I know that was important, at least for us being able to get this grant, that then allowed us to like figure everything else out.
Mhm. I just want to add one other side of the story here, just because if people watch
Mhm.
this and say, "Oh, like I get a grant, I make it." So there, we were 7 companies, I think, who got that first phase of the grant with us, or 6. I don't remember. Only one survived. It's us, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Only 2
it's
of us
tough.
survived to the next phase, and out of 2 of us, only one of us survived the still as a business of like what we started. Some of them are doing other stuff. So it was an opportunity, but I think it's not. You need more than that to survive. You
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
it
I mean,
was a great thing that we got, and I think you can fund your project doing consulting. If we didn't have the grant, I think we would have done the same thing, but it would have been much more slower
Yeah.
because we had to make enough money. But it might, I don't know, it might would have been more focused. Some of the things that we did because of what we wrote in the grant, and we had some cash that we had to use at the time. I don't know if it would have done that, but it's one of those stories that you don't know, right? Like we
Yeah,
just did
yeah,
it
yeah,
this
yeah.
way, and I think that was, yeah, that's what happened, and I think we made some lucky good decisions at some point in the process that helped us survive. And I want to do, Chris. Do you have more here to add? Or
yeah, a few
or
things, but yeah, if you
go
want,
go ahead.
you go first.
No,
Or
no, I just wanted to add the human aspect of it because I think
yeah,
Christian asked about like going from developers to like
yeah.
company owners. But yeah, go,
Yeah,
go finish your thought and then
Yeah, I,
I
I
can go
mean,
for
maybe
that.
I just want to say, just while we are talking about this grant too. I mean, because it was, I think, yeah, like Mustafa, you brought up the right way of what we would have done had we not gotten the grant. I think we would have tried to do more and more consulting. It would have been a lot slower, right? It would have taken us a lot more time to get there, but we would have gotten there. I mean, I just know both Mustafa and I think are very glad that we didn't try to seek an investor that had,
No.
would have strings attached to it.
yeah.
Because I mean, especially like the way you can even see the way the grant played out, right? So all these 6 or 7 other companies, they got the grant to make a cloud computing energy modeling service, and 5 years later, we were the only cloud computing service that was left running out of all those people who had gotten that. And had this been like an investor, like, with strings attached to it, within a mentality of like, no, you need to double down on your original, idea to make it work, we would not have been able to pivot into this other really, good market we found of just, helping people automatically extract the geometry from Revit and Rhino, right, in these CAD plugins that we now sell. I don't think we would have been able to do that and to make a successful company had we been holden to like, no, you need to stick to cloud computing and go down with the ship, which I think would have happened had like the
Yeah, I mean,
investor had strings
I see
attached to
that
it.
a little bit differently because I think investors should be fine with like pivoting,
Yeah,
like they are. You do a
that's
lot, but I
true.
think what an investor would bring was like we had to get to a growth level of like at any price so they can get their money back. So
Mm.
basically, they are interested in that, and I don't think we are a good company for venture capital to think
Yeah,
we are a good company for long-term success. We do slow, steady. We want to do things right, and it helped us to be able. We can basically put our bet on long-term success. I mean, I wrote the post about what happened with Pollination, and also Ladybug Tools. We will have a official release soon. We have made some announcement on LinkedIn, but the thing is we just think about thinking, okay, in 5 years this is going to pay back. We can pick a year and say, instead of trying to just double our sales right away with what we have, let's just take a year and rebuild this stuff because we know Like if we want to go further, we have to do this thing. We're hitting a ceiling over and over. So let's just redo it. And when you do that, you go in a phase of like, yeah, your cells are not going to be the same as what it could have been, right? You're just slowing it down. But then you have the luxury of making this kind of decisions because you don't have uh, investor. I say to my wife, I'm not a good boyfriend material. But I'm a great husband. It's just like like I think as a company we're not like a very we do this and what's the next exciting thing and we're just very focused on like a long term. We are trying to solve this and of course it's just like there are so many nuances. Like you don't do one other, like you keep an eye out of like what are the opportunities, what are the things that you could do. But I agree with Chris that having this control over our destiny of like what is the most important thing to do now and how do we want to do it, and then putting, and I think that's the what capitalism definition used to be, is like the profit is a constraint. The reason you have a business is to find neighbor what's that called, neighbor opportunity, the available opportunities to make business, right?
Mm,
That's the
yeah.
goal of you make a business, to solve a problem and find opportunities that are available in the market that no one else tapped on, so you can bring more profit, bring more capital, add more value. But I think that will switch as soon as you go with an investor. Like now your whole goal is not even profit, is revenue. It's like making this hype to basically either find an exit or go public in a way to bring all the money back. But I agree. Like I think we need more um, privately owned independent companies. And I'm saying that now like with much more experience, in a way that I'm not going to say like we will never sell pollination ever. I don't know. I'm going to get older like in 20 years. I don't know like how I feel in 20, right? But I know for now it's just like that's not how we designed the thing of
Yeah.
like, oh, we're gonna like how we get to that point to sell it as soon as possible. Now to answer your original question of like what does it mean to go from an open source developer or a project maintainer to a business, basically the way it has worked out for us is just I don't do any coding.
You don't it's only
Almost none. Like the only things that I do is like some infrastructure or some part of code that needs maintenance that I have written most of it, so no one knows and it's not well documented. Maybe AI
it's
can resolve that, but but
yeah.
that's the part that I have to like. That's all. Like otherwise, all my day is in support. Customer support, maintenance, product, and sales, marketing, all this stuff. And if you want to be successful in that, you have to find joy in it. I mean, for me personally, it was very easy because I don't have I have a very fluid definition of who I am or what I do. Is just like as long as I'm solving a problem that I think it adds value, keeps me very happy. I like learning about new things. Then yeah, it wasn't easy. It was at points very very painful because I had no
Mm,
idea. How do you sell something? How do you not confuse people when they're not part of the innovators and early adopters? Because I'm good with innovators and early adopters.
yeah.
I used to be. I know how to work. That's how open source project is. I know how to support, but I wasn't good with the mid market thing. It's just like I didn't know how to talk to them. I couldn't understand how they think, what makes them happy. And these are the things I had to work on. I had to learn. I had to read a lot of books. But
Yeah,
I
yeah, it's
enjoyed
a
it.
big change, right? That's
It's
like
a
going
huge
also.
change. It's a
Yeah.
huge. I mean, I used to when every day I used to check GitHub first. Now I check our bank account first, and then I
Yeah,
check
yeah, yeah,
Discord.
exactly.
And then I check Discord, and then I check my emails, and then maybe I check. I usually just check Basecamp, which is the place to see like if there's anything
Yeah.
I could help with. I do not check GitHub. Like very rarely I check GitHub. Like it's usually I check it when like something in our CI/CD is broken, and then like if it's something I can fix. That's yeah. It's a major change. You need at least one people. If you're one person, you need to get good at sales and marketing because that's how
Mm,
you survive. And when I say sales, I want to be clear. Like maybe a lot of people like they have a negative connotation comes with sales. It's not negative. Like there are good books on the topic. There is one called The Jolt Effect. I really recommend people to read. There is another one called Sales is Human. uh, Sales Human, I haven't finished it, but I read parts of it and I really liked it. The other one, I finished it. And it's just when you understand that you have a solution that can really help people. And the way for more people to get to this is for you to be able to teach them and explain it to them so they understand the solution exists, and also support them to get where they need to get through the process. That then it makes it a very interesting part of the process that I really enjoy, honestly, like every day. And I think the human problem is much harder than code problem to solve. At least if you are, a left-minded is it
Yeah.
left side of the brain? It's a really hard thing. Like code, you
Exactly.
just know, like if you do 10 things right, you get something predictable. Like humans are not like that.
Yeah.
Sales is
No.
not like that. And you have to learn. It takes a different personality too. It's just like you should really embrace failure and like hearing no. And kind of I did that when we started Ladybug Tools too, so it wasn't new, but this was different. Like again, doing it at like years later and this age, yeah, it takes it's a compromise. And it's different,
Mhm.
very different.
Did
Yeah, and
did
maybe I'll
you?
just add.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, Christian.
no,
You
no, no.
can.
Go ahead. Go
Uh,
ahead. Add something.
I just want to say because I know. I mean, if people are still thinking that there's a negative connotation to sales, because this took me a while to understand too. Like a lot of that comes from our experiences with overly aggressive salespeople and tactics that seem misleading that sometimes we've experienced, in either things that we've bought or, people trying to sell us things. And I mean, and the reality is like that book, The Jolt Effect, the main thing that it shows is those strategies don't work. They don't work very well. And that, what sales really is, when it's working well and you're doing it right, it's about being honest about the limitations of your software, what it does well, what it doesn't, and being confident, especially when like, okay, I know this particular person is suffering from a problem that I know we can solve. I know we can make their life better. Right. And that's a lot of, I mean, that's, I think, a lot of what like, yeah, if you're going to go down the route of getting into sales, like that's really like we'd really recommend that book and that just generally that philosophy of, yeah, I mean, just be honest and confident about the things that the software does, honest about the limitations that it
Yeah, and
has.
if you're a consultant, you're usually good at, there are three phases. Like you need to open, you're like opening for your sales. Then you have a mid thing that people figure out the stuff. And then you have a closing step that you close the sales at the end. And usually, if you are a founder or you're a consultant, you're good at the first two. Closing is the hardest part that you need to learn. And the mid part is something that you have to readjust to make sure you don't do too much consulting to get people confused. It's
Mhm.
about like, this is your thing, this is the way you want to go, this is what the solution that we have. Let's get it done so you can move forward. Because again, these people that you sell when you're more successful, they're not early adopters or innovators. They get very confused easily with so many options. So
Mhm.
you want to keep
Yeah.
I think that's one of the parts of the JOLT is just like limit
Yeah.
the scope is L in thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think those are the things. But yeah, it's different. It's very different. This idea of Chris and I remember when we were taking the train, like going to one of these DOE thing, we even thought about it as just like we can just switch this role of like, I do some of these things and Chris do more development and then Chris that. It's not like that. It's just a full-time job. Someone should take responsibility, ownership, get it done.
Done.
It
Yeah.
takes and it's a skill. It's like swimming. You can't read books and become a good swimmer. You have to go swim. You have to
Yeah.
sell. You have to fail. You have to go through this process
Yeah.
to learn how it is to learn it.
Yeah, and just one other important thing that I know that we did not do at first when we started selling, but we were not good at recognizing when someone was not our customer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Like
also
that
true.
is that is a really important thing as a salesperson. Just because at first you're so tempted, like, oh no, what if this is an opportunity? I don't want to let it go. Let me try and just sell them something. That is not helpful.
No. No.
Like
No.
the more helpful thing is just to be honest, like, okay, this person has a problem. It is different than what our software is good at solving, and just saying like,
Yeah,
it's okay. You can go find a different product
yeah, and
maybe
I
that'll
even
help
like
your.
tell people what to
Yeah.
use. Honestly,
Yeah.
if someone
Right.
comes to us and they want something and our software is not good, I not only I tell them like pollination is not for you right now, I say like if I were you, I would look into it like this software or that software.
Yeah.
I think they solve your problem better than what we do.
And that really that
Um,
builds trust with your customer when you're honest with them about
yeah,
like,
and it's
yeah,
just
we don't do this. Maybe go use this other software if you want that. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But that's also when you know it from when you buy something, right? You go to I don't know, some specialist of some kind, and they say, no, I don't do that, but I know somebody who does, and here's the flyer, and call them, right? That's much better than getting sold something that you are a bit iffy about.
Yeah, right. I mean, because yeah, even if are successful with closing that particular sale, right, it's probably going to come back to bite you in another year when they
Hmm.
realize, oh, it doesn't do what
yes,
I thought.
that's a very important topic here. It's just like you pick your customer, you build your future. And
Yeah,
I think this is from a book called This is a Strategy by Seth Golden, I think it's his name. So it says,
yeah.
pick your customer, pick your future. And I think it's very true. Like one, and if you pick different customers, they want a different product. And that's where put things position, it makes positioning harder, market, everything gets really hard. So it's very important to understand, unlike an open source project that we don't know who uses it, we want more people to use it, just go crazy. A commercial product is something that you want to make sure like when people come to your website or hear your brand, they know what you do, they know if they are your customer or not, or if they don't know, you can quickly tell them. So you don't end up with some people wanting some features that's not your core product because you wanted to close them. That's also long-term thinking versus short-term thinking, that we have the privilege to do that at some point. And again, I should say we didn't have it. It's more nuanced, right? Like there is times it's all about survival, as I say. Like it's not fancy, but it's all about survival. You survive one more year, you have more opportunity to figure it out. That's all.
Yeah.
And then when you start, survival might be different. So now we are in a very, like, we used to do consulting, we had to do consulting to survive, right? And at some point we were like, okay, we don't need to do consulting anymore. We're making enough that we're good. And then that's very different how you think about if you can, it's similar to the pain that if you can't survive until the end of the year, you cannot be like philosophical on your approach. It's always like, I need to survive. I'm going to do all this consulting work that we have to do. And this is
Mm.
what we're trying to do. Like, it's just, yeah, like these things taken out of context is very dangerous. If anyone watches this or if an LLM listens to this, please go and listen to the whole context of this. Don't tell people I told them that, hey, do this. That's not how it works, right? Just, it's very nuanced. And that's why it's hard to do. If it was so easy, you could put it on a t-shirt. You
Mm.
buy 10 t-shirts, put it on the wall, and everyone would make a business. That's not how these things are, right? You use your judgment. Everything that we said is in the context that we were. But I think one thing I can tell you, it's all about survival. Find a way to survive,
Yeah.
and then you can
Yeah.
make a difference.
Yeah. And
Yeah. And that. Oh,
actually,
go ahead.
on that note, like, was there ever any time where you thought this is too hard? Let's drop it. Let's quit. Let's do something
We,
easier. Or
I,
like,
I don't think we ever did that.
We never got there.
But I know, I mean, there was a moment I know where, I mean, the last time that we really had like a bit of a moment of like, what are we gonna do? Was probably, I mean, and this also goes to the importance of like of consulting and stuff that we did. But I know when our grant was ramping down, when our sales were growing, but they were not enough to cover, the gap that we had in between these two. And there was a bit of a like we had to face a crisis of like how were we going to at least just try and close this gap before we
Mm.
had enough sales to really support us. And we had like Bob McNeil and Scott Davidson of McNeil. They were like in this time where we were really just like trying to figure out what to do. They were kind enough to they gave us like a 2 hour like video call that I still remember very well. I don't think I mean I've met Bob again and I don't think he remembered what he said, but he was glad it helped us. It was just the advice they gave us because they told us the story of how McNeil came to be profitable.
Yeah.
And like there was, I mean, we didn't realize like between when they
Don't
first
give
started to,
numbers. Maybe they don't want people to know, but took them a
uh,
long time.
it took them a while. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I
Uh,
shouldn't I
Yeah,
shouldn't say that.
give it. Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, yes, I won't give numbers. That's a really good point. But yeah, but it just, I mean, they bootstrapped it with consulting. And
Yeah.
when we saw, okay, McNeil could do that, like that they, I mean, and they learned a lot from their process of consulting. Like once we had seen that, we were like, yeah, okay, this makes a lot of sense for us.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, and now yeah, we're glad that
And I
we went
think
that way.
maybe one of the things that we never got to that point. There is another book I should give. What's the name of that? Only Who Survives? Only my library is there. That's why I'm looking there. Only the it's not
Yeah.
psychopaths. So like if you're always
Only the anxious, was it anxious or
no,
like
it's not
paranoid?
anxious.
Only the paranoid survive.
Paranoid Survive. It's
Yeah.
written by the CEO Intel. It was his CEO. Or, yeah, I think we also have this like a paranoid mentality of like we're gonna go out of business next month. At least I do every single week. It was just like, okay, how are we going to go out of business? Like these are the three things that can happen. So how we make sure those three things are not going to happen, and that has helped to make some decisions sooner, rather than later. Just make sure we don't get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because of that, I think like we don't, because the technical part has not been too hard for us as much as like we really had to, maybe because that's something that we have been doing with consulting. It's not that the technical stuff that we do are not hard. They're really hard. Otherwise, like other people would have done it. But it's
Yeah.
more like, we had the muscles for those things. We knew how things comes like.
Yeah.
But this thing of figuring out how to sell this thing that we thought is very valuable, like bridge that gap of like how we communicate, how we understand, that took a toll. I mean, I say that it's just like I'm not like I get emotional when I talk about things that I like, but I don't cry in the sense of like getting so desperate to cry. That's not my thing. During pollination, I cried twice without knowing. I just like I had like I was just sitting there and like, okay, I'm crying really because I was really desperate. I thought like I
Yeah.
made a very bad decision. I did it once. Once I think I made a decision that I didn't go through like the whole process in a good way. It didn't put us in a place that we would go out of business, but we had to like change. And it wasn't even. It was about like our how people buy. Like we basically picked a Stripe instead of what we use now, paddle, and I didn't do the full research on like what are the limitations of Stripe. But I'm just saying, like, there were moments like that. I was just like, but it was never that, oh, this is too hard. Maybe we should not do it. It was just like, we'll figure it out. And again, we will, because we always like, we know we survive, right? And survival is not always, glorious. Sometimes to
No, no, no.
survive, you have to compromise, right? But at
Yeah.
some point, you survive and you kind of feel like, okay, we're also thriving. But it's again like let's focus to survive, because I think if I always say like this concept of the thrones in the desert. Someone who worked there for a while, they are very good. They survive for a long time because as soon as water is not around, they're done. You don't even see them. Then wait for a rain, and they just blossom. Like you're just like, what just happened? Like they have a strategies to just survive the hard times so they can thrive when the opportunity is. And I think at some point, if you're a flower and you're in a sun house and everything, can just thrive forever. To
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
like, but it takes time to get to a place that you can be more comfortable and you can think. But again, as I said, it's always to me, it's like only whatever those people survive. So you need to think about your business like that, of like you're going to go out of business. How do you stop that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and in many ways, like trying to get to a point of success, it's more, it's less about like trying to like just shoot for the moon and make it big, even though I feel like there's a mentality that tries to convince people that that is the way it has to be. Really, like, I mean, I think there's an undervalue in just survival that we don't realize just how important that is. That yeah, even though you might have made a mistake, if it doesn't wipe you out, that leaves you around to seize the next opportunity, right? And
Yeah,
just making right bets, and that are calculated, and not just like throwing it all away on one
I
idea.
think that is very helpful. Thinking in bets also is something that I think we do. We don't call it that, but that's how we work on it. And I think my thing has been, because now I don't develop and I have to convince Chris and Mingbo and just do it, just finish that thing. Like they're like, no, if we do it like that, it will be better. My thing always is, if you survive long enough, you get a chance to refactor this.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
we
yeah.
don't survive, we're
There's no
dead. Like,
point. Yeah.
just get that thing. And because we have, I think now people believe that because we have survived long enough to rewrite the whole Ladybug tools, survived
Yeah.
long enough to rewrite the whole model editor, survived long enough to rewrite the whole Palm Nation Revit.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and that was, yeah, that was key too. That there, I mean, like I know, right, when we there was like there, I mean, I know we've talked so much about the business side of like the change from open source developer to like company founder. But there was like a lot of technical stuff to figure out, especially, right, as we said, like what people want in a product is reliability. They want, something that they know can work and will continue to work. And there was a lot of, I mean, the revision, the rewrite we did of Ladybug Tools was really important for that. Right. I mean, yeah, we don't necessarily want to downplay that it
yeah,
wasn't easy to set up systems to make something reliable that we know we could build stuff on top of and that people could rely on. But I think the thing is too, it's just a lot of other companies have had to do the same, problem, and there are good like documented ways of like how do you set up your tests, how do you set up your CI, how do you
Mm.
set,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
things
yeah.
that we could like rely on that we didn't have to do. I think, I mean, we had to do some figuring out, but not as much as like on the business
So yeah.
side.
and
We
can I add
are.
one more thing
Yeah.
that might be helpful for people? I think one of the mistakes that we made early on when we were separating, speaking of like the differences. Um, so I said, like, you're not Facebook, we are not Facebook, we are not Python, we are not Google. There is this thing online that all this larger companies, VC backed, has just polluted the whole thing with like the way it works for them. I think it's very important for people to understand what works for them is not necessarily working for you. And I think that talk that we had with McNeil, we were looking for a company just like us who are successful and we like them and we respect and all those, and what's the way to do that. I think as part of that we had a realization of, a lot of things that we did in open source projects are actually great and are actually opportunities that's missing in commercial products. For example, most of commercial products don't have a discourse or a community, people, everyone can ask questions, because everyone is afraid of, like, oh, someone finds a bug, what people think about our product, something is wrong. We were on the
Mm.
other end, just like, of course every software has bugs. Either you send it to like a support ticket, your number 2536, in some random like black hole somewhere that you don't know, maybe you get something or not, or you just put a discourse and you just try to educate people of this is actually better. If you don't have project sensitive data, let's just solve it,
Yeah,
everyone
share.
else can help you.
Mm.
Yeah, and that helps us a lot. Like, I think like one of the feedback that we get from the customers who are not, who didn't know, are not Ladybug Tools users, it's always like, you guys, your support is just different. I think a big part of that is because we came from that open source experience and open source mentality. I think for a while we tried not to do that because it felt like people that think it is not, And I think that was also a learning process of things that it's not, again, it's very nuanced. Like, what are the things that you can learn from open source and test it? And the way we do stuff is, as I said, we made a lot of mistakes. I think this mentality of like, okay, if you're not going to die, if we try this thing, let's just try it and just accept that may not work. It's okay. We didn't die. And like, you just tell people like, we're testing this, they understand. And okay, you just try something else. And if overall it's positive, honestly, when you zoom out, you don't see these small dips. I think at the time they look like, oh my God,
But
we're just
yeah,
like falling down a cliff. But it's like, you go down. And when you need to go that, it's always like when you do something new, and that comes up a lot of just, if we do this thing, then we slow down something. If you want to do something new, you have to slow down something. You can't just build on top of it. And I think that's also a mentality to accept. Just like, you have to make mistakes, just make it in a way that don't die, communicate well with your customers, everyone, so they understand what are they doing, and just make sure not you don't take everyone with you. I think we do that also well. It's just like we test very locally of just with
Yeah.
the people who we know have the appetite. It's their real problem. So let's take
Mm.
risks together. And we do it, I think, like speaking of software development, we have figured out how to develop this stuff without breaking the whole thing. So there are so many revisions and small fixes that we do or small features that so many people don't know. I think that's one of the other things I learned that don't make noise. And I think that's very unlike what other companies do. It's just like, oh, we just added this single line, blah, like let's make a movement, like marketing campaign, or like single line, wow. And at some point, people just get tired of you. Like, I mean, I see with, I don't care, you know, just keep it, just like do it how you do it, like other people to tell you about the stuff. I think all these algorithms are, and LinkedIn is about like how many, what does they call it, impressions you get, and how many. I don't care. Like, they just make you like make more impressions. You didn't get enough impressions.
Mm.
I don't care. I want to add, when I have something to share to add value, I let people know we did this thing. And for the rest of it, we're not dead. We are still doing things, but I don't have something worth telling you to share with you. I mean, again, there is a gap. Sometimes we do it like too much. I think we
Uh,
should share more. But again, I think that's also important. Just that's also an opportunity for you because everyone else is making everyone tired about every single thing that they do on LinkedIn. Everyone is noisy. If you really being someone who send a signal, people understand your signals are important. They understand you respect their time. You don't just bother them with everything because you just want an impression. And then that changes things. I think that's an opportunity. Basically, there is a concept search. I don't know how much time we have. It's called reverse benchmarking.
mhm.
Uh, this guy, I have to give a shout out to Rory Sutherland. He, like, I found him, it just helped me a lot to put a lot of these things that I couldn't understand in words. And he has the concept about reverse benchmarking that I think people should look like. And I think we use it for a lot of these things. It's just instead of trying to be good at what everyone else is good at, look what are the things that other people really bad at and try to be really good. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I did.
Yeah, we
I
have.
did just want to qualify also something that I said earlier, like thinking, reflecting on what you said, Mustafa, is that when we said like systems to create things that are stable that people can really rely on and use, that also doesn't mean because there's a temptation to interpret as in like don't release it until it's like it's
yeah,
good enough to go, and that's not what you should do. It's more just about the process, how you release things, right? Is like you want to first, like if something is new, you know that there are bugs in it, right? Maybe release it to the people who right who are most willing to like understand and play with it and give you feedback, and then gradually try and expand it, and eventually you can get to the LinkedIn impression, like if it's really stable and you're just trying to reach more people. But yeah, but you don't want to start there, especially every time you add something new. And I think like maybe also a good example of this too is like it is still really important to release something, right? Because like I remember when we first started off with the CAD plugins, we're like, everybody, please send us your Revit models, and we will, so that we can make the software better, so we can solve your problem. And like it was just silence. Like everyone's like, no, no, you got to sign an NDA if you want a Revit model. You got to do this.
mm,
And then like as soon as we released the Revit plugin, like here, it's a solution. It works. And, knowing it's full of bugs still that we got to fix.
Mm.
Everybody's like, okay, here's my model. Just solve it for me. Just like so had we not released it, right, you wouldn't have gotten those models that actually help you make it better. And so
Uh,
yeah, so I just want to qualify that. It's just like when we say like
that's good.
systems,
Yeah,
it's
we can talk about this forever. Like, I mean,
yeah.
this is a very, I think, important subject for people if they want to move from open source or like from a project to a business. I think that's we have learned a lot on this and like how to do stuff. One of the other thing I can add is the one that like building a product, and again going back to how the documentation that you find online is more for Google, Facebook, like the larger companies, hundreds of, that's not you, is the thing about like you kind of need to know everything before you start anything mentality. It's just like, what's the scope, what's the budget, who's going to work, how many engineers, like before writing a single code. It's just, which is very unnatural because I mean, if you have ever bought a house or if you have watched my favorite show, like what's that, House Hunters, people come in with what do you want? I want a pool, and I want this, and I want that, and I want everything, and I want like 4 bedrooms. And the best part is when Americans go to find a house in Europe. It's just from Midwest. It's just like they go, it's just like, yeah, and if you have like 3 bedrooms with bathroom in each, will be great. And they're like, okay. So, but what you see during the process is trying to understand like by solve the problem is part of understanding the problem. People go and
Mm.
see 3 houses and they're like, okay, that's not going to happen.
Okay.
Or I thought this is not important for me, but actually it's very important because I want to bike. So I want to be
Mm.
here. And that goes back to what Chris said about releasing it at some point and having this, because that's part of, you think, what are you trying to solve? Many times you think, like, and it, like House Hunters, watch the show, you will get the idea. From the time that they start and talk about what they want to buy and the time that they really buy something, you can see how they change their mind during the process. And it's totally
Mm.
fine. It's not a
Yeah.
failure because you didn't make the 3 things that you thought when you started. It's just like you bought a house, you're happy with it, it meets the things that you want. That's part of the process. I think a product, we should think about it more like this: of
Like a
you want to buy a
U-curve.
house, you want to
Mm.
build something, you think it's important, these are the things that you want to achieve, this is the appetite that you have to achieve it. Let's give it a try and
Yeah.
be okay that maybe we realize one thing that we thought is very important is not important. And if it's not a failure, it's not like you shouldn't mark everything done. Like OKRs is one of the worst things that we wasted our time, was like developing some OKRs. I don't know, it maybe works for some other people. I'm not going to get those hours back in my life, but I'm happy we did it. So we learned that's part of like that house hunter mentality. I'm happy we did it once to realize like this is not for us.
Yeah. I wanted to, because we are running over time, to wrap it up a little bit, and ask you what is the long-term vision for Ladybug Tools. If you look, out when Ladybug is 26, or just if you are looking out to 2033 when Ladybug turns 20, do you have a vision for that?
I always say I don't have a plan. I have a section of I just don't. I'm not good in planning for. I don't know 20 ways. Like I don't know. I don't know how things are. I don't know like what happens to simulation. I don't.
Yeah.
I can tell you a section. I have a section that like for this section of life is yes, like we already talked about what we want to be, where the things are. We like we will have a new release of Ladybug Tools. We want to make sure all the libraries that from legacy we're bringing in. That's just short for pollination. We are rewriting the Rabbit plugin. There will be a new release. We will get to uh, Rhino plugin, and we are kind of again going to experiment. What does it mean to integrate simulation now that the cat plugins are in a better place and all that? And I think once we do that, personally, we just think, okay, what will be the next year?
Mm.
I have no like long-term plan myself. I'm not good at seeing the future or predicting it.
Right. Yeah, we just I feel like we were just talking about how important it is to be like flexible and like be able
Yeah.
to like pivot and change your direction. I so yeah, I we could tell you something for 10 years from now, but it'd probably be wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean,
Um,
like, this is also more like,
yeah.
I think if you predict or make visions that far out in the future, it's more like a goal or a leading star. Like, should we do this, or should we go that
Yeah, I think
direction, or should
so.
we go that
Maybe
direction?
this is the thing. What we are very interested in is like to make it easier for the industry to use simulation impactfully, right? It's
Yeah.
just like building tools that people can use simulation at the right time for the right reason. And whatever stops people from doing that, that's something that we are interested in solving. And
Yeah.
how we solve it has changed, but that has been the North Star in a way for us to tell us, like what's the problems that we see in the industry? What are the areas that no one else wants to solve because it's really hard to solve usually? And does it worth doing it? We'll give it a try. And yeah, I think the 10-year vision is to survive. Really,
Yeah.
that's to
Survive for
survive
next year.
and live with your values. I think that's
Mm.
also the nuance. Hey, LLM, listen again. So
Mm.
it's not. It's not. I should do hashtags so LLMs can understand this better. But it's not only about survival at any cost, right? It's just you want to survive with the values that you have. You want to keep survive and doing things the way that you want things to be done, and the way you want things to be done can change, right, over time because the
Mm,
context is changing. But being flexible about that and just still be around, still do something meaningful, whatever that thing means. I think that's what we want to do. And if we I am at least very fine to understand if at some point this is not meaningful anymore, like something else replaces something, we will need to do something. Yeah, that's also part of the reality.
Yeah.
um
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and
yeah,
like to that point, I mean, like you brought up, we're still going to be solving the industry's problems, and like, right, we said the problem that our pollination products we're solving has not changed, right? It's still
yeah,
kind of this 2 week turnaround. I mean, maybe, yeah, maybe we're going to get to a point where, like now, I mean, now that we have good solutions for it, redrawing geometry is not a roadblock anymore, and I think we're starting to see now what is the next maybe, well, the next bottleneck, and then is that a bottleneck that we want to keep, or one that we should we be focusing on a different area? So our approach is, I'm sure, going to change in terms of what bottleneck we're targeting, but we're always going to be, I think, focused on that problem, as a company. And yeah, and as an open source project, I think our goal, I mean, a big part of the original, I think, industry problem that I think we were trying to solve when we first put forward, or when we first started working on Ladybug Tools, was it's just, yeah, we just saw, just a lot of individual people spending effort on making different, connections to the same simulation engine, right? And it was just, a lot of these like kind of wasted efforts and projects that would eventually die and not continue, and we wanted to have something like a shared thing we could all work on together, right, that that we can know would live on and keep serving as infrastructure for everybody else to use into the future. And so I think that is still going to be a main, the main thing that we try and solve with the Ladybug Tools open source project, is that we just, yeah, I mean, if we see a phenomena again of like everybody building their own separate connection to a certain simulation engine, I think we will, yeah, we take that into consideration when we decide what to work on for the open source project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been really nice to talk to you. I think it's been super interesting to hear what you had to say. I don't Felix, we don't have any questions, do we, from the audience? Or
Shall we maybe like open it for like 5 minutes or like a couple of questions from the audience, if there are any?
and we were just so clear about everything. How could
yeah,
be any
yeah,
questions?
No, it's.
um,
I think it's been really inspiring to hear you guys. You can feel the passion that you put into the project and everything you do, and it's just great that you took the time to speak that openly to us. I think there's lots to take away from it, and I hope you can continue for a long time to inspire us with your work primarily, but hopefully with a second check-in at some point with us with open source to construction, because
Mm,
that's part of why we evoked open source to construction, to just kind of create a platform and say, hey, there's
right.
so much possible if you really just keep doing it. And of course you have to learn lots of things, but if you do it the open way, you can learn it in a different way. You're close to your customers, you can speak out and say, hey, that's what I think, and someone else will say probably it's not the best idea, and then you correct it. And I think it's very refreshing to also see that you're successful with it, but just following the principles all the way.
Yeah.
yeah,
You're lucky we survived.
Yeah.
yeah. That also sounds like
I
hard
guess,
work.
yeah.
Yeah,
But all of
I,
us, I mean, you have to work hard everywhere you work.
yeah,
It's
it
like
is. That's
it's not
true.
like
Like, yeah, maybe that's a good one to talk about too, right? Like this thing of, I don't know about other people here. I mean, in your 20s, you should work really hard if you want to be some. You have to be really privileged in a way that either you're so smart that you don't need to work hard and you make it, or you're privileged that you have so much money and resources that you don't have to work and you make it.
uh,
Otherwise, if you're an like normal person, average, even if you're like maybe smarter a little bit than average, you still have to really put the work in.
Yeah.
And
And you have to
yeah,
go
this,
through everything. Like you can listen to
yeah,
as many podcasts and read as many books. If you don't take decisions and you realize it's not the best, but you feel like it's
yeah,
going further, customers are coming back, and like this, it's a kind of a self-enforcing wheel also. But you have to go through it. It's nothing you can
it's
buy
true.
in as a plugin. You just have to do it. As you said, like if you want to swim, you need to go in the water and do it.
Yeah, and I think it's the one thing that I see sometimes with the younger kids that I talk to, they want to start business or something. I think they have been on the A plus train all their lives, and they're very afraid of getting a C minus, and
Yeah,
that
exactly. Yeah.
kills a lot of people from starting. I think like I feel like people who were in college were C minuses or something are better fit for like a starting a business sometimes because they have failed it. They just like, all right, whatever.
They
Another
know.
C minus. You see, I still survived. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but
I still
also
got my
this,
degree.
but also being honest and saying, hey, to start a business with consulting, it's totally fair. It's your own business and you grow with
It's
your cash
totally.
flow and you're close to the customers, and probably it's even better. And I really like this notion that you put in before, and so you say that the internet is flooded with like YC startups and whatever, and that's the way you do the pitch deck, and that's the way you raise money. I mean, so many
Yeah.
people think about raising money first before like really thinking about product market fit and going out there and having customers. And I think reshaping this vision a little bit is also extremely helpful, and I guess enables many businesses. And today, I mean, if you're honest, like with consulting, and if you have some experience and some network, you can make a living. You know, it's like with
Yeah,
AI,
that's
you can
very
produce so
important
much, and
too.
it's like you don't
That's very
need
important too.
500,000 like as a first investment to keep going for half a year. No, you just need some consulting gigs and keep going and build something.
I wish I could remember this. There is a projection model, basically, which is what you said, which I think is the right one. So instead of usual, like what you find on the internet mostly is just like draw this hockey stick thing, right? What
Yeah,
is the maximum growth that you can do? But the real diagram that helps you is how many people need to work on this, how much money you need to
exactly.
make to work on this, right? How long, how far you can go, how long do you think it's going to take? Multiplied by 3 or 4.
Exactly.
That's how much money you need to make. Now, how much do you
Yeah,
think you can sell this for? Divide it by 2, and now see how many people you need to get. And
yeah,
then if
exactly.
this math more works, it means
Bottom
like you
up.
have enough people to pay you the thing that you thought in that much year, then you might have a business case. And then again, you have to go test
Yeah,
it. And it is worth it. And what you
and
said, the internet, the world is too big now. Like it's just like if you find your niche, if especially if you're a small business, 1 or 2 people or 3, then you don't need the whole world for an idea to work. And again,
exactly.
it's about like what kind of life you want to live. But that's a very important point. Not
And
everything needs to be like Google, Facebook, something scale to be valuable. Like we
and
really
then
need these smaller things to solve.
and
Agree.
also take into consideration how many other people on the entire world would take the same efforts to get to there. You know, to do this calculation and solve the problem as you do. There might be not so many. It's just important to pick a niche, I guess, and really get started rather than have big business ideas that you probably even don't dare to share with everyone because you think someone else will do it. It's about like either you make it to
I
get
agree.
started or not.
Yeah.
And that's
One second.
the
Uh,
library.
The
yeah, I
library
have
Just
to
turn the
find.
camera.
I forgot. Chris, do you? I think you listened to the audiobook. It's just like there is a book. Oh, here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
This
it
I couldn't remember the name.
psychology? Oh no, pattern
Pattern
breakers. Yeah.
breakers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why some? It is a startup in the, but the things that the basically the core idea is very strong of like why some ideas work and why some of them don't work and how to evaluate it. Again, this is a great book to read. It's called Pattern Breaker. Should I add a
Yeah.
disclaimer? I
Chris, I
Great.
in
have
no
one more.
way or terms I'm being related to this guy. It's just a good book.
Yeah, I know these are just things we found helpful. And actually, that's why we're doing, but why we're doing booking verses. This was a really
This
important
was
one,
a very important
Mostapha.
book
That
too. Yeah,
yeah,
that's actually I forgot about. That was one of the very
yeah,
important books at the time that I read that changed how
Yeah.
we survived with Ladybug Tools. Actually, oh yeah, we
Yeah,
should have talked
this
about
one,
that.
yeah, it was very key. I mean, for open source
It
developers,
was
especially,
very
like,
important. So a
yeah,
short
Give
snippet
or
of like
takers.
how that thing
give and take.
helped.
Yeah, by Adam
Give and
Grant.
take by Adam Grant.
Yeah.
So it basically says people are either givers, takers, or matchers. Givers,
Yeah.
matchers, or takers. And then the key question is like, who do you think is the most successful between givers, takers, matchers, or takers?
Like,
Almost successful in what terms? Like commercially successful.
yeah,
Yeah,
like in terms of salary, like,
everything.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he's a business school professor. So the key, I give it away. So basically, if you think short term, takers are actually successful short term.
Mhm.
But when you see long term, there are part of givers that the most
Yeah.
successful.
yeah,
And then
Without givers, a taker can't get far. Yeah.
but
well,
if you check down there, there are some least successful are also givers. So
yeah,
it basically tells you how to be a giver and how to be successful.
yeah.
Mhm.
So right, so both the least successful and the most
Most
successful people
successful.
are givers. But the
Uh-huh.
majority of them are
Yeah.
givers. According to like the studies that he's run and the surveys he's performed. But right, so then the whole book is just the question: what is the difference between those, like, those, like, the least successful givers and the most successful givers? And a lot of it has to do with just surrounding yourself with other givers,
And
and
Yeah,
matchers
yeah.
to
That's
protect
open
you.
building up
source
defenses
communities
against
and
the
like
takers.
Yeah, and like how to protect your community, because that book was
Yeah,
very helpful to understand. Takers will
yeah.
come to the community and try to take over and take advantage of it. And how do you protect that? That's
Mhm.
also something that we learned from that book. How did I forget about that book? Yeah, that was a
yeah.
very,
I
very
did
important
too.
book.
So
Yeah, yeah. That was early on. That was one of the book. And Jill, what's her name? Jill, she's now a director at the company used to be Page. Now it's part of a Stantec. And she was, when I was teaching at Penn, she was one of the students, and she recommended that book to me. And that was one of the books that I
Mhm.
read. And then I basically gave away, I don't know, like 20 copies maybe to
Mhm.
many people. I think
I
I
know
feel
these
Chris,
books.
you read it too,
yeah, I think
right?
this one might have been what you gave me.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just like because I had the moment of God, like this is why, like, or this is how you do it, and then don't feel bad not to help takers, just kick them out because they're gonna basically take advantage of you and let you die, and that kind of thing. Again, like it's a bit of, Adam Grant is like getting all his projects based on good people are going to win, which is not 100% the case, but it has a lot of good things of like how to be good, how to live with your principle, how to be a giver and still be successful. I think that's also in a way is our Ladybug Tools way of thinking when we do stuff of, like a lot of things shows up, comes up. We see there is a market, you can get a quick win. And for us, it has been like, nah, that's not for us. We don't want to be that. We protect ourselves against them. And then we do it the way that we think is like the right way of doing it and still be
Mhm.
successful. I think that's also important to just tell people like you don't need to be a B pole to be successful. You can
Mhm.
have a successful business and doing it the right way. There are opportunities to do that. And I think that book is a great book to read on that
Yeah.
topic.
And never forget that these small businesses, as you just described, probably are not as noisy as the ones with large or like much VC money in the
Yeah.
back. But people just have a good life nonetheless, even though they're not in the news and the media all the time. And
Yeah, that's good. You
it's
guys doing this stuff. I think that's helpful for people to,
mhm.
people who are looking for alternative solutions that have been successful that haven't gone through that mainstream. And I think the other thing, again, going to reverse benchmarking, that's what everyone is trying to do. You're competing against everyone else, writing a pitch, using the, ChatGPT Gemini to write that the same pitch that you're writing.
Yeah,
Mm.
Your
yeah,
chance of success is very low. It's a race
yeah,
to the bottom.
yeah.
Unless you get really lucky and survive, everyone dies.
Mhm.
So what can you do the other way to be successful without doing
Yeah.
something that everyone else does? I think that's
And
also
the
a
best,
good example of the reverse benchmarking.
the best pitch deck is anyways to say I have 50 customers or 10 customers and they come back to me and they like the idea and I need more money to scale it because without the money I couldn't. I mean, that's for me the only reason to go and get some external money, to be honest. Like if you get it too early and you need to pivot and you can't, and then you just waste so many years of your life running
Yeah.
after an idea that's not probably not worth it. I mean, not necessarily bad VC, but I think especially in our business in real estate, construction, so many SMEs, and it's not a market that scales easily. And VC needs scaling, and if scaling is hard, probably do something else, but survive for long term doing stuff that you love to do. So very, it's very okay, I think, to grow slower but steadily and have your team and your passion and stuff. So fair enough. I mean, I think that's many engineers, architects, people that just work in the industry have not had so many business lessons in their education. Many business lessons that we get are from the internet, and it's very dominated by a certain type of how you build startups. And I think probably now with AI, it becomes a bit more accessible, but still it's very important to talk about it and
Yeah, I think
keep
AI is
going.
going to change a lot of playbooks that you find out there, because now
Yeah.
many of these things will be what you said. It doesn't make it necessarily easier, because it now everyone has access to what everyone else has access to, at
And
least on the
SaaS,
lower
yeah.
level. Yeah. So I think that's actually make this human connection and trust and all
Yeah.
that even more valuable than what it used to
Mm.
be in sales, because now, like, it's just the fact that I'm not going to use AI to get back to people, to customer emails, is a positive on our end. Yes, it's not efficient, but it is positive. It builds trust. People know they're talking to someone who knows what they're talking about. People know we value their time and really read through it and all that. So it's an interesting. I think everything always is like a vector, goes in two directions, right? It's like digital cameras didn't kill um, like manual photography. The ones who were good photographers actually became way more valuable, because now everyone could do average things quickly. I think that's like how kind of like look to opportunities that comes. And
Mm.
maybe what you say, like, in a way, AI makes that thing so noisy and so crowded, you should go totally take advantage of what you learn, but go totally the other way that no one else could do or can do easily to find the
Yeah.
opportunity. But yeah, let's just be honest, like, it's going to be hard, whatever you do. Just that's part of it.
Absolutely. Don't expect it to be
That's
easy.
part of it, and get to it. And I think that's one of the other things I hate about LinkedIn. And if LLMs hear
Everything
this one,
seems
I
to be easy.
really hate, like, the things that gets a lot of impressions and everything is just like, oh, how to go from 0 to 2 million in like 20 minutes on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Just like, please
Just
stop.
yeah.
Just LinkedIn should have something of like, just you're
But
blocked for the next 5 months.
why would anyone comment and believe in this, if it's
Well, I mean, it
like
might happen for someone, but that's not how normal life is for most of us. Just like that shouldn't be on top. That I think that on top it should be like, how it took me 20 years to get to 1 million and I survived. Yes, something like
yeah,
that.
exactly.
You can do it in like 2 years to get to
Yeah.
1 million and survive. It's just those are the things that are valuable and more people need to know about, not like the I don't know, the Michael Jordans of the world, because in basket, it's just, like, yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. They make money out of attention, so that's what they do. So just, I think people need to be
Perfect.
aware of that, of just like, if their business is not to give you the thing that you need to know as fast as possible. Their business is for you to come back. They don't care about anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
be careful about that.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
I think
very,
we
very
should wrap it up,
inspiring.
right?
What?
Yeah,
I couldn't
I
hear
think
you.
we should wrap it up. Like, I think
Oh,
it's
of
been
course.
I
Of
wrap
course.
it up.
Yeah.
very inspiring to hear your also honest kind of a story about how it's been the last 13 years. Yeah, I'm very happy that you found the time to come and talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you
I
for
mean, we should
inviting us.
thank the community for sure. Like, yeah, maybe this one I let Chris do it. I
I
feel
mean,
guilty. I feel like I'm talking too much.
no, no, no. I think we're all getting a good chance. But I mean, yeah, I mean that's, I mean, yeah. The truth is, yeah, we certainly wouldn't be here without the community of people that uses our software. And I mean, it's really, I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe we're the ones talking to you here, but like, you know, like Ladybug Tools effort is, I mean, a dozen really, hardworking contributors and volunteers on our forum. I mean, there are so many people that we have to thank really just for making the software is what it is, and allowing us to be here today. So yeah, I mean, thank you to the community, for everybody who uses us, for everybody who reports the bugs for us, for everybody who helps triage those bugs and answer questions on the forum. It's just, yeah, we owe a lot to you. We wouldn't
Yeah,
have
we
been
see
able to
you, and
we
we
wouldn't have
we
been able
are
to get here
thankful.
without you.
Yeah, and I sometimes take the time to reach out to people and tell them sometimes I don't have the time, but thank you, everyone does that. I also want to thank like people who stuck around with our pollination experiment and endeavor. Like everyone who helped building the product. I don't want to name names because I'm worried that I forget about someone and then that will be a problem. You can see like who is on pollination website right now, and then the people who helped us along the way. It is an experiment, and as I said, all these people who work with us, they have better opportunities other places. I know that for a fact, and they still stick around because like I think we're doing something good together, and that's good, and um, that's a great feeling to have this kind of people around you. Again, just finding your niche, finding your people, and being able to do this for as long as we have done with joy, and doing it the same way. It's because we were lucky with all this, and I think we both Chris and I owe like a huge amount of success to them doing what they did, and again sticking around. I hope we gave back, like tried to provide a good place for them to work and enjoy and interesting problems and all that. But at the end of the day, as I always say, like to internally, to I know they can find a job that they get paid more easily.
Yeah. And I
Finally,
mean, but
yeah,
I
I'm
hope that
pretty
you
sure.
feel the way that we do, which is that, we've made, like,
Yeah,
I hope you feel we live in a community surrounded
yeah,
by givers, because we've decided to work
yeah,
together.
and yeah,
And because of
and
that,
again,
yeah, we have a
it's
lot of
very
success.
important. I hope more companies. I think one of the other things about like it's just building a community and building a company that givers are successful in it
Mm.
gives me a lot of joy. That like because you want people who give away, you want nice people to win, and you want to be part of like build the infrastructure for them, build the opportunities for them
Hmm.
to be successful. Like I think that's also a big part of what we do. And thank you for everyone who helped us through that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming. I will turn off the